We're all watching everything that's happening in Minneapolis and Minnesota right now. We're going to cover so much of it tonight. But I can't stop thinking about the fact that two things can be true at the same time. The first truth is that the people of Minnesota have done something incredible. I mean, the neighbors, the church leaders, the members of the community that have braved sub-zero temperatures. You just saw how cold Chris was from standing outside for an hour, and people have been outside for hours protesting. Even under the threat of pepper spray and even violence, they've been standing outside and making absolutely clear that they were not going to stand for the continuation of the lawless and cruel operations led by Greg Bovino. I mean, the people of Minnesota, unquestionably, I've been watching politics for a very long time. They pulled off something incredible. The people of Minnesota made Donald Trump blink. That little angry, cruel henchman of his is now on his way out of their state, on his way to early retirement. Greg Bovino, of course, that is. And that level of activism and commitment is, in my view, probably the best display of humanity we have seen since Donald Trump was inaugurated in the face of a massive tragedy. And yes, the people of Minnesota were back at it today, protesting outside of the federal courthouse in Minneapolis. You can see them there tirelessly protesting. And yes, they were celebrating Greg Bovino's departure, as they should. But they were also demanding that ICE leave their state once and for all. Which brings me to the second truth. And that is, and I hate that this is true, but it is true. This fight isn't over yet. Just listen to Governor Tim Walz earlier today and what he had to say about it.
I understand Greg Bovino is gone, and that's a good riddance one. But it doesn't change the fact that the posture is still the same, that this is a unorganized, untrained, dangerous force on the streets that has nothing to do with either immigration or law enforcement. So I'll tell you today is there's a bit of optimism, but there's such a sense of resolve. And I would say this is the Minnesota kind of attitude. A lot of folks think winter's over in March. Minnesotans don't let their guard down till May. And I'm telling you, these folks that are out there on the streets, they're very skeptical, and rightfully so. So the mood is, there's a hint of hope and optimism, but there is a resolve that says, the end of this is not Greg Bovino leaving. The end of this is a sane policy on how you do immigration reform and stop an attack by the federal government on a state.
So maybe it's February, March, based on Governor Walz's analogy there, but we need to get to May. Yes, Greg Bovino is gone. That's a good thing, very good thing. And his departure is also supposed to be accompanied by a reduction in Homeland Security officers patrolling the streets of Minneapolis. We will see, but that's another win. But as you just heard Governor Walz say, we are not at the end. I mean, for starters, the man Trump decided to replace Bovino with in Minneapolis is border czar Tom Homan. And I'm betting you know exactly who Tom Homan is. There he is on your screen. But just to refresh on the specifics, because I did this myself over the last 24 hours. During Trump's first term, Homan was the architect of Trump's cruel and inhumane policy of separating children from their parents at the border, many of whom still have not been reunited to this day. In Trump's second administration, Homan openly defended defying a judge's order to halt deportation flights to El Salvador, saying, "I don't care what the judges think." During a speech in April in Arizona, he said, "If you're in this country illegally, you should be looking over your shoulder." Of course, Homan is also the Trump administration official who reportedly took a $50,000 bribe from an undercover FBI agent, a literal bundle of cash stuffed in a bag from the fast casual restaurant Cava. Very smooth on Tom Homan's part, I will say. And he claims he did nothing illegal there. Unless anyone thinks that despite all of that, Tom Homan will somehow be the guy to change the way ICE agents in Minneapolis treat protesters. Here's what Tom Homan said about those ICE protesters just earlier this month.
One thing I'm pushing for right now, Laura, we're going to create a database where those people that are arrested for interference, impediment, assault, we're going to make them famous. We're going to put their face on TV. We're going to let their employers in their neighborhoods, in their schools, know who these people are.
So that's the guy you just saw there who's going into Minnesota to tone things down. And yet, despite all of that, Republican members of Congress are happy to jump on that narrative and act like this is going to solve everything. I mean, this morning, Senator Lindsey Graham posted this, quote, "I appreciate the president and his team, led by Tom Homan, trying to find a way to turn the temperature down in Minnesota." Senate Republican leader John Thune echoed that sentiment, posting, "This is a positive development. one that I hope leads to turning down the temperature and restoring order in Minnesota. And we should all hope for that. I hope I am wrong in this. But again, I think we should all remain clear-eyed here, given that Donald Trump appears to have just replaced one lawless anti-immigrant zealot with another. And when he was asked today about the shift from Bovino to Holman, Trump did not back away from defending his most controversial allies or from demonizing protesters.
Bovino is very good, but he's a pretty out there kind of a guy. And in some cases, that's good. Maybe it wasn't good here. But you have to understand, when I watch some of the people that I've been watching over the last few weeks, these are paid insurrectionists. These are paid agitators. These people aren't normal.
Trump is still calling the people protesting ICE in Minneapolis paid insurrectionists, even after two of them have now been killed at the hands of his own agents, even after there's been a supposed massive shift here. And while Trump is not currently repeating his administration's line that Alex Preddy is a, quote, domestic terrorist, he is still repeatedly blaming Alex Preddy for his own death.
Certainly he shouldn't have been carrying a gun. I don't like that he had a gun. I don't like that he had two fully loaded magazines. That's a lot of bad stuff. I don't like the fact that he was carrying a gun that was fully loaded and he had two magazines with him, and it's pretty unusual.
Well, that being said, you know, you can't have guns. You can't walk in with guns.
Donald Trump is blaming Alex Preddy for his own death because he thinks protesters can't have guns. Now, set aside for a second that Alex Preddy was a licensed gun owner in a state that allows concealed carry, who appears to have been disarmed before agents shot him. And we have all seen the video many, many times. Donald Trump has repeatedly and publicly endorsed right-wing protesters who show up to demonstrations with guns. That's also a truth. When armed protesters showed up outside the Michigan state capitol with AR-15s to protest COVID lockdowns, Trump called them very good people and urged the governor to give in to their demands. When Kyle Rittenhouse shot and killed two Black Lives Matter protesters in Kenosha, Wisconsin, Trump came to his defense as well. And as we learned from testimony under oath to the January 6th committee, Trump even demanded the magnetometers be removed from his January 6th rally so the protesters who stormed the Capitol could keep their guns, saying, quote, "I don't effing care that they have weapons. They're not here to hurt me." That guy I just described now says that Alex Preddy should not have brought his gun to the protest. Listen, I wish he was completely reversing course here, because there are plenty of other things we can be talking about if he was really de-escalating fully. I wish I could tell you that I think he's actually going to turn the temperature down. Perhaps the best evidence we have of that right now is that the majority of people around him who have done the most to inflame tensions in Minneapolis are still in their jobs tonight. Remember, it was Trump's Secretary of Homeland Security whose agency first maligned Alex Preddy in the hours after his death, baselessly smearing him as a domestic terrorist. Well, today, Donald Trump was asked what he thought of the job Noam is doing, and here's what he said.
I have, yeah. I think she's doing a very good job. I think she's doing a very good job.
I mean, I think she's doing a very good job. There we go. The second Trump official to publicly attack Preddy was the Trump advisor, Stephen Miller, that guy, who called Preddy an assassin just hours after his death. And today, Miller is in such good graces, he was on Air Force One. There he is walking up the stairs of Air Force One with Trump as Trump flew to Iowa. Trump still has not fired or demoted either Miller or Noam, though each of them is acting like their job is on the line and searching for a scapegoat. So that's telling, too. Today, Axios published a report claiming that Noam's original statement calling Preddy a terrorist was driven by Stephen Miller, citing 4 sources. But then the reporter behind that story said that Stephen Miller called that reporter and said that he had just been operating off information given to him by Customs and Border Patrol. See, there's a lot of blame gaming going on here. So someone leaks to the press that Noam's terrorism comments actually came from Stephen Miller, and then Miller turns around and says that he actually got those comments from Greg Bovino's CBP, which reports to Kristi Noem. And yes, all of that infighting craziness shows none of them are willing to be held accountable, but also none of them condemn that comment either, which I think is also quite telling. Look, if Donald Trump and his administration actually wanted to de-escalate this situation, There are some tangible things that he could do. For starters, he could end his disastrous ICE operation in Minneapolis. He could end the bogus investigations his Justice Department has launched into Minnesota Democrats for allegedly, as they say, obstructing ICE, simply for speaking out against the horrible things they're doing. He could call off his administration's bogus investigation into the widow of Renee Good. He could direct his administration to cooperate with Minnesota's investigations into the agents behind these shootings, or tell the Justice Department, which we know he runs, even though you're not supposed to as president, to open a real civil rights investigation into the officers. And he could tell congressional Republicans to work with Democrats in their efforts to rein in ICE, which is overbloated, overfunded, and overempowered. Trump is still a long way from making this situation better. But that doesn't mean that pushback isn't working. It is working. Greg Bovino is out of Minneapolis, a Republican candidate for Minnesota governor who just 2 weeks ago was promising to support Renee Nicole Good's killer, has now dropped out of the race and abandoned his party completely, saying he cannot support the National Republican's stated retribution on the citizens of our state. By our count, at least 23 Republicans are now calling for some kind of investigation into these deaths. I'll get to that later. What kind of investigation does matter, but it's a start. And some Republican senators are now even calling on Secretary Noem to resign.
Donald Trump just got banned for life from Davos. Not suspended, not uninvited for next year, banned for life. They literally told him never come back after what he did at that speech. And we're not talking about some minor controversy or a little diplomatic incident that'll blow over in a few weeks. We're talking about Trump going to the World Economic Forum, standing in front of world leaders, billionaires, CEOs, heads of state, and completely torching every relationship America has with Europe in one speech. And the reaction was so bad, so immediate, so catastrophic that they made the decision right there. He's done. He's out. He can never set foot in Davos again. And the implications of this, what this means for American foreign policy, what this means for Trump's presidency, what this means for the global economy, it's absolutely massive, and nobody's talking about how serious this actually is. So let's talk about what actually happened at Davos, because the details are insane, and they explain why the reaction was so extreme. Trump shows up to the World Economic Forum, right, which is basically where all the most powerful people in the world gather every year in Switzerland to talk about economics and policy and global cooperation and all that stuff. And Trump's been invited before. He went in his first term. It was awkward, but he got through it. But this time he apparently decided he was going to use the platform to threaten half of Europe. Not subtle hints, not diplomatic pressure, actual threats. He got up there and started talking about Greenland again, started talking about Denmark, started talking about how America needs to expand its territory and how these countries better cooperate or else. And he said it. He said the or else part. He didn't rule out military force. He said we can do this the nice way or the not nice way. That's a direct quote, essentially. The nice way or the not nice way. Like he's a mob boss. Like he's Vito Corleone making an offer you can't refuse. Except he's the president of the United States. And he's saying this to America's allies at an international forum in front of the entire world. And the room apparently went silent. You had European leaders sitting there just stunned. You had CEOs looking at each other like, did he really just say that? You had people from NATO countries realizing that the President of the United States just threatened member states with potential military action if they don't hand over territory. And this isn't some closed-door meeting where maybe you can walk it back later or claim it was taken out of context. This is Davos. This is being broadcast. This is being recorded. Every word is going out to the entire planet in real time. And Trump just stood there and kept going. Kept talking about how America deserves Greenland. Kept talking about how Denmark is being unreasonable. Kept implying that military force is on the table if diplomacy doesn't work. And you could see people in the audience just checking out mentally, just realizing that there's no point in trying to negotiate with this guy. There's no point in trying to maintain normal diplomatic relations because he's not operating in reality anymore.